If pride were a person, he would be named Pedro. He donned lavish suits, drove luxury cars that he rented, and resided in a rented apartment. Yet, hidden beneath all that shine was a secret that started the day he invited his impoverished mother to his wedding, not to honor her, but to humiliate her. What Pedro failed to realize was that the woman he regarded as a mere poor vegetable seller held a secret of her own, one potent enough to rattle his world and humble his heart in front of the entire city. After the passing of Pedro's father, the house fell silent to silent. The laughter that once echoed through its walls had vanished. Madame Grace donned black for months, her eyes perpetually red from tears. Pedro attempted to be strong. At just 24, he was working at a small company in the city. His girlfriend, Lydia, visited frequently. She wore perfume that filled the air and always carried designer handbags. One evening, as the rain gently fell, Lydia sat next to Pedro in the living room, crossing her legs. She surveyed the house with disdain. "Pedro," she started, "we need to have a conversation." Pedro sighed, feeling weary. "What is it this time, Lydia?" "It's about your mother," she replied coldly. "Since your father was buried, she has refused to leave. It's been months. Don't you think it's time she returned to the village?" Pedro frowned. "She's my mother. Where do you expect her to go? My father is gone. She has no one else." Lydia rolled her eyes. "Pedro, stop pretending you don't see what's going on. Everyone in the neighborhood is talking. They say your mother is a witch. They claim she caused your father's death." Pedro's expression darkened. "Stop that, Lydia. Don't ever refer to my mother like that." Lydia stood up in anger. "Why are you defending her? Can't you see what she's doing? Ever since your father passed, your business deals have been failing. You even lost that contract last month. Don't you understand? She's bringing us bad luck." Pedro gazed at her in disbelief. "That's absurd. She's just grieving for her husband." Lydia moved closer, lowering her voice. "Pedro, hear me out. You have a bright future. Don't allow that woman to bring you down. My parents have made it clear that they won't support our marriage if your mother continues to live with you. They said, no good thing comes from a witch's house." Pedro looked at her, his heart racing. "My mother is not a witch." "Then make a choice," Lydia said sharply. "It's either me or her." The words hit him like a bolt of lightning. For a brief moment, the room fell silent, save for the sound of rain tapping against the window. "Lydia, you can't force me to choose between you and my mother," he replied weakly. She crossed her arms. "Then perhaps we shouldn't be together." "I can't marry a man who resides with a witch." Pedro's chest constricted. He loved Lydia more than he was willing to admit. She was stunning, intelligent, and came from a wealthy family. Losing her would mean losing everything he had strived for. He stood there, feeling confused, hurt, and angry. After a lengthy silence, he finally said softly, "I'll speak to her." Lydia's eyes sparkled with triumph. "Good. You're making the right choice, my love. You can't thrive while she's around." She kissed him on the cheek and exited the room with a smile. Pedro remained alone, staring at the wall. His hands shook. That night, Madame Grace was in her room when she heard a knock on the door. "My son, come in," she said gently. Pedro entered slowly. He didn't sit down. His expression was stern. "Mother, we need to have a conversation." Grace smiled gently. "Of course, my son. Please, take a seat." But he shook his head. "I'll stand," he replied. Lydia said, "It's not right for you to continue living here." Grace looked up, puzzled. "What do you mean?" He turned his gaze away. "You know, people are talking. They say you caused father's death." The words pierced her heart. She rose slowly. "Pedro, how can you say that? I loved your father. I was by his side until his last breath." Tears welled in her eyes. "Please, my son, you know I have nowhere else to go. Your father left me with nothing. I don't even have a home in the village anymore. Let me stay here until I can get back on my feet." But Pedro's expression remained cold. "You'll be fine, mother. You can stay with your friends or family. I'll send you something later, Pedro." Her voice trembled. "You are all I have." He gazed at her one final time. "I'm sorry, mother, but Lydia is correct. I can't afford to lose her." She fell to her knees, weeping. "Pedro, please don't cast me out. I carried you in this womb for 9 months. I endured for you." But Pedro scowled. "Mother, don't make this more difficult. Please, you must gather your belongings and leave now." He opened the door and stepped out, leaving her on the floor, sobbing. Rain began to fall again outside. Madame Grace stuffed a few clothes into a small nylon bag. She turned around one last time, gazing at the house that once echoed with her laughter. Her tears mingled with the rain as she murmured, "God, watch over my son. He no longer knows what he's doing." She knocked on her friend Aunt Rose's door around midnight. The older woman opened it in astonishment. "Grace, what happened to you?" Grace was drenched, shivering. "He sent me away," she replied softly. Rose gasped. "Pedro?" Grace nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He claimed I unseated his father." Lydia said, "I'm a witch. He believes her." Aunt Rose embraced her tightly. "Come in, my sister. Don't cry. You can stay here as long as you need. God will fight for you." Grace entered quietly. The apartment was small, yet warm and serene. The fragrance of fresh flowers filled the air. Rose guided her to the couch and fetched a towel. "You're drenched, Grace. Sit down and rest." Grace sat slowly, her hands shaking as she wiped her tears. "I lost everything tonight, Rose. My home, my son, my peace." Rose sat beside her and held her hand firmly. "You haven't lost your son, Grace. He lost you. But one day he'll return, crying, and the world will see who was truly blind." Grace closed her eyes as more tears fell. "If he ever returns, I'll forgive him," she whispered softly. "But I'll never forget this night." A few days later, Aunt Rose resolved to visit Pedro at his office. She couldn't sleep for nights, reflecting on how poorly he had treated his mother. Rose told herself, "No, I can't just sit and watch. He must listen." Pedro's office was located within a tall glass building in the heart of the city. The receptionist appeared taken aback when an elderly woman in a simple dress entered. "Good afternoon, Ma," she greeted politely. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, my dear," Rose answered calmly. "Please inform Mr. Pedro Williams that Aunt Rose, a friend of his mother, is here to see him. It's important." The young lady hesitated for a moment before calling upstairs. Moments later, she said, "He said you can go up, Ma." Upon entering Pedro's office, Rose paused for a moment, taking in the expensive surroundings. Leather chairs, gleaming floors, golden curtains. Pedro was seated behind a large desk, dressed in a navy blue suit, exuding the aura of a man who had conquered the world. He offered a faint smile upon seeing her. "Aunt Rose," he said, standing halfway. "What brings you here?" Rose sighed. "Pedro, I came in peace. I came as a mother." He frowned slightly. "Please tell me what you came for." "I have a meeting soon." She stepped closer and spoke softly. "Pedro, you don't have to let your mother live with you if that's your choice, but at least provide her with some help. Send her something to eat. She has no money, no support. She's living with me now, and I witness her pain every day. She prays for you, even after everything that happened." Pedro frowned. "Aunt Rose, please don't start this again." "Pedro, listen to me," Rose persisted. "She carried you for 9 months. She fed you when your father was alive and even during tough times. You have everything now. Don't forget the hands that raised you." He let out a cold laugh. "Hands that raised me or hands that ruined my father's life?" Rose's expression shifted. "Pedro, don't say that. Your mother loved your father. That's what she wants you to believe," Pedro retorted. "But I know what really happened. Everyone knows she used her charm on him. She's not innocent. If she could hurt my father, she could hurt me too." Rose inhaled deeply, fighting back tears. "Pedro, my son, don't speak ill of your own blood. Even if people lie, you must remember who she is to you." Pedro's anger intensified. "Aunt Rose, I'm giving you a warning. Don't ever set foot in my office again. I don't require you or that woman in my life. I'm managing perfectly well without both of you." Rose stared at him in disbelief. "Pedro, your pride is ruining you." He gestured towards the door. "Please leave before my secretary has to escort you out." Rose's voice quivered. "Pedro, even if your mother isn't living with you, please, at least." He interrupted her sharply. "Never. I will not give her a single cent. Do you want what happened to my father to happen to me? You and that woman should keep your distance from me and my fiancé. Don't ever come near me again." His words cut deep. Then he sneered bitterly and added, "Good luck to you two unfortunate women." Rose gasped, clutching her chest. Tears welled in her eyes. "Pedro, you will regret saying this one day." He turned away coldly. "I doubt that." Slowly, Aunt Rose exited his office. Once downstairs, she sat on a bench outside the building, shaking her head. How can pride turn a son against his own mother? She murmured to herself, wiping her tears. Oh Lord, open his eyes before it's too late. That evening, she returned home to Grace. The poor woman was sitting on the couch. When she saw Rose's expression, she realized the conversation hadn't gone well. He refused, didn't he? Grace asked softly. Rose nodded sadly. He said he'll never assist you. He called you names, Grace. Horrible names, Grace. Her eyes brimmed with tears. He said, I'm a witch, right? Rose looked down. Grace managed a weak smile through her tears. Then let him think that for now. When the truth finally enters his life, he will understand who his real enemy is, she continued. I won't curse my son. I'll just wait. One day, he'll need his mother, and I'll be there. Not to punish him, but to remind him of his true self. Rose embraced her tightly. You're a strong woman, Grace. Grace nodded gently. No, I'm just a mother with a shattered heart, waiting for God to mend it in his own time. That evening, Pedro came home, still seething from Aunt Rose's visit. Lydia was perched on the sofa. She immediately looked up when she noticed his face. Baby, what's wrong? She inquired. Pedro frowned. You won't believe who visited my office today. Who? She asked eagerly. Aunt Rose, a friend of my mother's. Lydia frowned. What did she want? She came to plead with me to start sending my mother money. He chuckled bitterly. Can you believe it? She replied. My mother has nothing to eat. She said I should be supporting her. Lydia's eyes sparked with anger. That woman again. I know her house. Let me go there tomorrow and set her straight. How dare she meddle in your life? Pedro raised his hand calmly. No need. I've already handled it. She won't approach me again. Lydia relaxed, smiling with pride. Good. You're finally learning to assert yourself. You owe nothing to anyone. Not that woman. Not her gossiping friend. Pedro sighed. You're right, my love. I've closed that chapter. My future lies with you, not them. Lydia beamed sweetly. That's my Pedro. The past is behind us. Let's concentrate on our future. We'll create an empire together. Pedro smiled faintly, but deep down, a small, quiet part of his heart felt empty. The following morning, Aunt Rose sat at the small dining table with Madame Grace. Grace appeared tired, yet peaceful. She had just finished cleaning the kitchen and was about to brew tea when Rose said gently, Grace, you can't keep sitting at home doing nothing. Grace sighed. Rose, what can I do? I have no capital, no connections left. I've lost everything. I don't even know where to begin. Rose smiled warmly. Then start small. We'll begin with what we have. Grace looked up in surprise. What do you mean? Rose opened her purse. She took out an envelope and placed it carefully on the table. Take this, she said. It's from my little savings. Use it to start a small vegetable business. You can buy from the farmers and sell to the local markets. You're great with people. You'll rise again, Grace. Grace's eyes brimmed with tears. Rose, no. I can't accept your money. Rose smiled. Don't argue. It's not just you. It's love. You've always been there for others. Now it's your time to receive help. Grace opened the envelope slowly and discovered cash inside. Her hands trembled. Oh, Rose, I'm at a loss for words. Rose took her hands. Just say thank you and promise me you'll rise again. Grace embraced her tightly. Thank you so much, my dearest friend. What would I have done without you? Rose returned the hug. You would have done the same for me, Grace. They both smiled through their tears. This marked the start of a new chapter for Madame Grace, a chapter that would soon transform her pain into strength. The following morning, Madame Grace awoke before dawn. For the first time in weeks, she felt a glimmer of hope in her heart. Aunt Rose was still asleep, but Grace quietly put on a simple gown and tied her wrapper. She picked up the envelope Rose had given her, held it close to her chest, and whispered, Lord, bless my friend, and bless these small beginnings. She stepped out into the crisp morning air. The city's streets were still peaceful, with only a few buses in motion. She stopped at a small wholesale market, purchased baskets of tomatoes, onions, and peppers, and rented a tiny wooden table at the roadside corner near a busy intersection. Initially, people just walked by. They didn't recognize her. Some shoppers went to other stalls, but Grace continued to smile and greet everyone politely. Good morning, my dear. Fresh tomatoes here. she called out cheerfully. A young woman paused. How much, Mama? Grace replied with a warm smile. Fair price, my daughter. I don't deceive my customers. The woman smiled back and made a purchase. It was a small sale, but it made Grace's heart leap with joy. She whispered, Thank you, God. It's a beginning. By afternoon, the sun was blazing, and Grace felt exhausted. Her back ached, her feet throbbed, but she didn't complain. She recalled her friend's words. Stand again, Grace. Every evening when she returned home, Rose greeted her with a smile. How was business today? Grace would respond with a slow but steady smile. People are starting to recognize me. Within weeks, more customers started to visit her. They appreciated her kindness and honesty. Mama Grace, they would call out, please give me those ripe ones. My wife adores your tomatoes. She would chuckle and pack them swiftly. Tell your wife I'll bring more tomorrow. Life wasn't easy, but it was serene. Grace didn't possess much, yet she held on to her dignity. She was earning her own income and feeding herself once more. One evening, Aunt Rose returned home. Grace, she exclaimed with excitement, you're becoming well known. Everyone at the market is talking about you. They say your vegetables are the freshest and your smile is always bright. Grace chuckled softly. All glory to God, my sister. I'm simply doing my best. Rose settled beside her. You know what I've been considering? What? Grace inquired. We should rent a larger space. If your business continues to grow like this, you'll soon need assistance. Grace smiled gently. One step at a time, Rose. For now, let me just express my gratitude to God for where I am. The same streets that once witnessed my tears now bear witness to my courage. They both laughed like two sisters who had weathered a storm. That night, Grace lay in bed gazing at the ceiling. She thought about Pedro. She wondered if he ever thought of her. She prayed softly, Lord, wherever my son is, keep him safe. Let him discover the truth. Far away, Pedro was indeed maturing, but not in spirit. He was pursuing contracts, fame, and luxury. He no longer spoke his mother's name. Lydia's influence over him grew stronger. He had a new car, a new office, and a new sense of arrogance. One evening, as they drove home from a dinner party, Lydia laughed and remarked, Baby, remember when your poor mother's friend visited your office? I heard she's now selling vegetables too. Pedro smirked. Birds of a feather flock together. Lydia giggled cruelly. Exactly. Poor women running poor businesses. You see why I told you to distance yourself from them? Pedro nodded with pride. I already have. My life is better now. One sweltering afternoon, Madame Grace was arranging her tomatoes and peppers at her roadside stall. Business was thriving that day. Suddenly, Lydia appeared. Grace looked up in astonishment. Lydia? Lydia burst into laughter. Well, look at you, she remarked, with a wicked grin. So, it seems the rumors are true. Pedro's mother is now peddling tomatoes by the roadside. Grace remained silent at first. She simply wiped her hands on her wrapper and continued to arrange her tomatoes with composure. Good afternoon, Lydia, she said softly. Lydia laughed once more. Afternoon. I see you still have some manners. Look at you, standing under this blazing sun, selling vegetables like a beggar. What a foolish old woman. Grace's gaze softened, yet she did not respond with anger. Instead, she said, Lydia, you are not God. Lydia raised her eyebrows. What did you say? I said you are not God, Grace repeated gently. If you were, perhaps you could control the future. But you can't. Lydia frowned. Listen to me, old woman. Your son is now a successful man. He has proposed to me, and we are getting married soon. Since you left, everything has been going well for us. He has wealth, power, and respect now. None of that is thanks to you. Grace sighed softly. I'm glad he's doing well, she replied. He's still my son, no matter what happens. Lydia laughed coldly. Don't refer to him as your son. You forfeited that right when you were cast out of his home. You should be thankful I even allow you to speak to me now. After all, I will soon be your daughter-in-law. Grace regarded her with calm eyes. A true wife brings peace to her husband, not pride. One day, you'll come to understand that. Lydia rolled her eyes. Keep your advice. You're just envious because your time has passed. Look at you, selling by the roadside, while I will soon be walking down the aisle in golden heels. Grace looked up at her and offered a faint smile. Enjoy your heels, my daughter. Just remember that pride can cause even a golden shoe to break. Lydia frowned. What does that mean? Grace shook her head. You'll find out when the time comes. Lydia hissed loudly, climbed into her car, and slammed the door as the vehicle sped away. Weeks later, Pedro and Lydia were seated together in their living room. The wedding date had finally been set. Lydia was browsing through a bridal catalog when Pedro spoke softly. We need to make this wedding the most spectacular event this city has ever witnessed. Lydia beamed with pride. Absolutely, my dear. My father has already secured the venue. The guest list is filled with affluent and notable individuals. It will be flawless. Pedro nodded and leaned in closer. But there's one more thing we must do. Lydia looked up, curious. What is it? Pedro paused, then replied deliberately. We are going to invite my mother. Lydia's expression shifted instantly. What? No, Pedro. Don't even think about it. That woman will humiliate us. Just picture her in that hall with her filthy wrapper and market odor. Pedro's smile turned icy. Calm down, my love. We're not inviting her to honor her. We're inviting her to disgrace her. Lydia blinked in astonishment. To disgrace her? He nodded, a slight grin on his face. Yes, let her witness the contrast between her life and ours. Let her see what true success looks like. I want her to sit at the back and watch me become everything she believed I could never achieve. Don't you trust me? Lydia's anger softened into a pleased smile. You're devious, she said softly, chuckling. Pedro beamed with pride. Sometimes the wicked need to experience their own medicine. Lydia laughed more heartily. All right, let's do it your way. We'll send her the invitation, but ensure she sits far from us. Pedro chuckled. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. 3 days later, a courier arrived at Madame Grace's stall, holding a golden envelope. Good afternoon, madam, he said courteously. You have a delivery. Grace wiped her hands on her wrapper and accepted the envelope. Thank you, she replied quietly. Upon opening it and reading the words, the wedding of Pedro Williams and Lydia Rowland, her hands began to tremble. She slowly sank onto a stool, staring at the card for an extended period. Aunt Rose approached. What's that, Grace? Grace handed her the card in silence. Rose read it and sighed heavily. So, he's finally tying the knot. Grace nodded faintly. Yes, my son is getting married, and I had to learn about it from a stranger. Rose sighed again. Don't be sad. At least he remembered to send you an invitation. Grace smiled faintly. No, Rose. He didn't invite me with love. He invited me to make fun of me. Rose frowned. How can you say that? Grace sighed. I know my son's heart. This invitation is not from affection. It's from pride. He wants me to see what he has become, she said firmly. I'm not going. Rose looked at her with concern. Grace, don't say that. You must go. You are his mother. No matter what he thinks, sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Go there and let the world see what Grace truly looks like. Grace looked away. I don't have the clothes or the courage for that. Rose smiled gently. Leave that to God. Just prepare your heart. A few days before the wedding, Grace was at her stall early in the morning. Business was going well that day. She was arranging her vegetables when a black car stopped near her. A well-dressed man stepped out, holding a leather briefcase. He looked around as if searching for someone. Good morning, madam, he said respectfully. Are you Madam Grace? She looked up, surprised. Yes, I am. Can I help you? The man smiled warmly. My name is Mr. Stephen. Please don't be alarmed. I was led by the Spirit to come here today. I saw your stall yesterday while driving by, and something in my heart said I should stop and bless you. Grace blinked, confused. Bless me, sir. I don't understand. He opened his briefcase and took out a check. This is for you, he said, handing it over. Grace looked down and gasped. It was a check for a large amount of money, more than she had ever seen in her life. Sir, I can't take this. This must be a mistake. Mr. Stephen smiled kindly. No mistake, ma. I've already paid for a big supermarket space in your name. It's in the city center near Greenfield Mall. I was told in my spirit that you are a good woman who has suffered too long. God wants to change your story. Grace's hands trembled as tears filled her eyes. I don't even know what to say. Why me? The man smiled. Because God sees you and never forgets those who love with a pure heart. Grace's face was covered in tears as she cried softly. Thank you, Lord. You never abandon your children. Mr. Stephen nodded and gently said, Go there tomorrow. The manager will hand you the keys. Everything is set. I'll come back soon." After he left, Grace stood for a long time, gazing at the check through her tears. That evening, she hurried home to Aunt Rose, clutching the check tightly to her chest. "Rose," she exclaimed, as she entered the house, "you won't believe what God has done." Rose's eyes widened at the sight of the check. "Grace, is this real?" Grace nodded, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Yes, my sister. A stranger came to my stall and blessed me. He said, God sent him. He has already paid for a supermarket in my name." Rose embraced her, and they both began to weep. But this time, their tears were of joy. Rose whispered, "You see, Grace, I told you your story isn't over." Grace beamed. "God just opened a new chapter. And this time, even those who mocked me will witness what grace truly means." The sun rose brightly that morning. The city buzzed with excitement. Luxurious cars lined the street leading to Crystal Hall, one of the most stunning event venues in town. It was the day everyone had been anticipating, the wedding of Pedro Williams and Lydia Rowland. Pedro stood in front of the mirror in his groom's suite. His groomsmen were laughing and snapping selfies, teasing him about how nervous he appeared. He smiled on the outside, but deep down, a strange emptiness lingered in his chest. Moments later, his phone rang. It was Lydia's voice. "Pedro, I still don't understand why you invited that old woman. You know how these things can get ugly. I hope she won't embarrass us." Pedro chuckled softly. "Relax, my love. Everything is under control. I've already instructed the ushers to seat her at the back near the exit. She'll see what I've become, but she won't get close." Lydia laughed on the phone, her tone proud and satisfied. "Good. Let her witness what true elegance truly means. After today, she will finally realize that her time has passed." Meanwhile, Madame Grace stood before her mirror, dressed in a simple yet stunning manner. She wore a light blue gown that fit her perfectly and styled her hair neatly. Aunt Rose emerged from the bedroom and gasped softly, "Grace, you look stunning." Grace turned and smiled shyly. "Do you really think so?" "I absolutely do," Rose replied warmly. "Your supermarket is thriving. God has elevated you once more, and today your son is getting married. Even if he fails to recognize your value, God certainly does." Grace nodded, her eyes softening. She picked up her small purse and said quietly, "Rose, I'm only going for peace. I have no intention of fighting anyone." "I understand," Rose responded with a gentle smile. "But when light enters darkness, the truth reveals itself. Just go and be yourself." They embraced tightly. Then Grace stepped outside, standing by the roadside to hail a taxi. She clutched her purse tighter, attempting to flag down another taxi. Just then, a loud car horn blared behind her. She turned and froze. A gleaming black Hummer Jeep halted right in front of her. The door swung open, and a neatly dressed driver quickly stepped out. "Good morning, Madam Grace," he greeted respectfully, with a smile. "Mr. Stevens sent me. He instructed me to take you wherever you need to go today." Grace's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? Drive me?" "Yes, ma'am," the driver confirmed. "He mentioned that today is a special day for you. The car is entirely at your disposal now. He wanted it to be a surprise." Tears welled up in Grace's eyes instantly. She was utterly astonished. "Oh Lord, you remembered me." Grace entered the Hummer Jeep slowly. The car sped off, powerful and bright, leaving everyone on the street gazing in admiration. The Hummer Jeep glided toward Crystal Hall, where the crowd was already assembling, and where destiny awaited to unveil the unexpected secret. Madame Grace's car came to a stop in front of the wedding hall. She took a deep breath as the driver stepped out and promptly opened the door for her. Gradually, she emerged from the sleek black Hummer Jeep, holding her small purse tightly. Everyone at the entrance turned to gaze at her, taken aback by the sight of a modest-looking woman stepping out of such a powerful vehicle. Some guests murmured, "Who is she? She must be one of the bride's wealthy relatives," another speculated. The security personnel greeted her with deference and ushered her inside. She moved with elegance, her steps steady and assured, her heart whispering a single quiet prayer. "Lord, let peace accompany me into this place." Madame Grace entered the beautifully decorated hall quietly. She made her way to an unoccupied seat at the back, where she would go unnoticed. She settled down gently, resting her small purse on her lap. Her expression was serene, but her heart raced. Nearby, people turned to murmur, "Who is that woman?" One asked softly. I don't know, another responded. But did you see the car she arrived in? That black Hummer outside is hers. Grace overheard them, but remained silent. She offered a faint smile and gazed toward the stage. Moments later, Pedro and Lydia entered the hall hand in hand. Cameras flashed, applause erupted, and the music swelled. Lydia waved proudly, beaming at the guests. Pedro walked beside her, attempting to appear confident. Then, as they strolled down the aisle, Pedro's gaze suddenly landed on a familiar face in the crowd. His pace slowed, and his heart raced. It was his mother. Madame Grace sat quietly, her eyes brimming with warmth and tears. She smiled gently when their eyes met. Pedro froze momentarily. His throat felt dry. He hadn't anticipated her presence, and he certainly didn't expect her to arrive in such style. Lydia noticed the abrupt shift in his expression. What's wrong? She whispered sharply. Pedro blinked rapidly. She's here, he whispered back. Lydia's eyes widened. Who? My mother. Lydia turned her head slightly and spotted Madame Grace sitting calmly in her blue gown. Her smile vanished instantly. She came? Lydia hissed quietly. Oh, my God, what is she doing here? How did she even get here? Pedro swallowed. I don't know. Lydia forced a smile for the cameras, but whispered through clenched teeth. You assured me she wouldn't show up. You promised she wouldn't humiliate us. Pedro attempted to remain calm. Relax. She's seated far away. She won't create any issues. Yet deep down, he was anything but calm. His heart raced as he gazed at his mother, serene, elegant, and dignified in her simplicity. As the ceremony commenced, Pedro struggled to concentrate on the pastor's words, but his thoughts kept wandering. Every few moments, his gaze returned to her. For the first time in years, he noticed something different about her, something powerful and regal that he had never seen before. And while Lydia smiled and waved at the guests, a quiet fury simmered within her. She glanced back at Madame Grace once more, and muttered under her breath, Old woman, savor your final moments here. After today, I will ensure you never come near us again. A few minutes later, during the wedding ceremony, Madame Grace's phone began to ring softly from her purse. She quietly stepped outside to take the call. Hello, she answered gently. A strange voice came through the line, deep and urgent. Madame Grace, you need to go home immediately, the voice urged. Your friend, Madame Rose, is in danger. Grace's heart raced. What? Rose? What has happened to her? But before she could receive an answer, the line went dead. The caller ID displayed as private. Her hands shook. She attempted to call back, but there was no answer. Fear tightened her chest. Oh Lord, please don't let anything happen to her. Without a second thought, she left the hall. Moments later, she arrived home. She flung the door open in a panic. Rose, where are you? She shouted loudly. Aunt Rose emerged from the kitchen, startled. Grace, why are you back so soon? I thought you were still at the wedding. Grace halted, staring in bewilderment. You're okay. Rose frowned. Of course, I'm fine. Why do you ask? Grace, still gasping for breath, replied. Someone just called me at the wedding. A peculiar voice, he remarked. You were in danger. Rose appeared taken aback. In danger? Who would say such a thing? From what number? Grace shook her head. It was a private number. I couldn't return the call. I got frightened and came home right away. Rose's gaze sharpened. That doesn't seem normal, Grace. I suspect someone is toying with you. Grace lowered her eyes, deep in contemplation. Perhaps you're right. Maybe someone didn't want me there. Rose settled beside her and held her hand. You shouldn't have left. You were destined to be there. You're his mother. Grace let out a heavy sigh. I know, but it's all right. I never truly wanted to go. I only went because you urged me. Maybe this is how God intended it. Rose shook her head with sadness. Grace, don't say that. You've come too far to retreat now. But Grace offered a faint smile. Let them have their moment, Rose. I'll remain home and pray for them. I've already forgiven them in my heart. I don't need to be present. Rose observed her in silence. You're a resilient woman, Grace. Yet something about that call feels off. Grace sighed again. Perhaps. But if it was meant for me to stay home, then I shall. God knows what is best. Meanwhile, back at the wedding, the hall was hushed as the pastor beamed at the couple before him. The cameras were poised, and everyone leaned in to catch the final vows. Pastor Daniel gazed at Pedro with a warm smile. Mr. Pedro Williams, he stated clearly. Do you take Miss Lydia Rowland to be your legally wedded wife? Everyone anticipated the customary, yes, I do, but Pedro remained motionless, staring at the audience. His hands quivered. After a prolonged silence, he gradually shook his head. No, he uttered softly. The crowd gasped in disbelief. Lydia froze, her smile vanishing. Pedro, she whispered in astonishment. What did you just say? Pedro met her gaze directly. I said no. I will not marry you, Lydia. I was blind, but now I see. I nearly discarded the only person who genuinely loved me, my mother. The hall fell utterly silent. He turned to face the crowd. For years, I believed in falsehoods. I allowed pride and money to dictate my actions. I pushed away the woman who gave me life just to satisfy someone who never genuinely cared. But today, as I stand here, I finally grasped the true meaning of love. He turned to face Lydia once more. Lydia, this is the end. I thank God for opening my eyes before I committed the greatest mistake of my life. Lydia's eyes widened in shock. Pedro, are you out of your mind? You can't do this to me in front of everyone. Pedro shook his head resolutely. It's already been decided. And thank God it was your father who financed this wedding, not me. Farewell, Lydia. Without saying another word, he turned and exited the hall. The audience was left in disbelief. Lydia remained frozen, humiliated, and trembling. Tears streamed down her face as she cried out, Pedro, come back. But he was already gone. A few minutes later, Lydia returned home, filled with anger and shame. Her makeup was a mess from crying. She pushed the door open, calling out his name. Pedro, where are you? How could you do this to me? But the house was silent. Then her gaze fell upon an envelope on the dining table. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. It said, Lydia, I invited my mother to the wedding, not to humiliate her, but to reveal the truth about you. You made me think she was the issue, but today I saw the reality. The real issue was you and the pride I allowed to fester within me. I wanted everyone to witness the person you truly are. The wedding was never meant for you. It was the lesson I needed to learn. I'm leaving to reconcile with my mother. Don't try to find me, Pedro. The letter slipped from Lydia's fingers. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing. No, this can't be happening, she murmured. Her world crumbled around her. The cameras, the fame, the pride all vanished in an instant. Later that evening, back at Aunt Rose's house, the door swung open, and Rose's daughter, Anita, entered wearing her graduation gown. She had just completed university and radiated happiness and vitality. Mama, I'm home, she exclaimed, beaming. But when she spotted Madame Grace, she rushed over to embrace her. Annie Grace, you seem so joyful. My mother shared everything with me. I am incredibly proud of you. Grace beamed and embraced her in return. My daughter, welcome. Congratulations on your graduation. Anita settled next to her and softly reassured. Don't worry, Mama Grace. I will assist you in your new supermarket while I search for a job. You are not alone. Tears welled up in Grace's eyes as she grasped Anita's hand. Thank you, my dear. God bless you. And may God also bless the stranger who aided me when I had nothing. They all smiled and spent the evening together, enjoying food, conversation, and gratitude towards God. Meanwhile, in Lydia's home, she was seething with anger. She paced her room, while her father, Mr. Rowland, sat silently on the sofa, filled with disappointment. Lydia yelled, This is your doing, father. You thought you could buy Pedro with money. You believed everything in life revolves around power and class. Now look, he has humiliated me in front of the entire city. Mr. Rowland let out a deep sigh. Lydia, stop yelling. I didn't force that boy to leave his mother. He made his own decisions. Lydia stomped her foot in frustration. No, we must confront him. He cannot just walk away like this. He has embarrassed me. What will I say to my friends? My colleagues at work? They will mock me. Mr. Rowland regarded her calmly. How do you intend to confront him? He no longer works for our company. We have no control over him. Love is not something that can be purchased. He sighed and continued. Love cannot be coerced, Lydia. You also need to focus on self-improvement. You must change your ways. No man desires a proud and cruel wife. Concentrate on your future. Lydia's eyes brimmed with furious tears. So that's it? After everything, You just want me to remain silent? He has disgraced me, father. Her father replied gently. He has disgraced himself as well. But this is life. Sometimes God uses shame to impart lessons to people. Lydia clenched her fists. I don't care. I will never forgive him. How will I face my friends? How will I show my face at work? Mister, Roland looked at her and said softly, you will face them with your head held high, and you will learn from this experience. Lydia turned away, weeping quietly. Pride still resided in her heart like a burdensome stone. The following morning, Pedro drove silently to Graysmart supermarket. His heart raced. He hadn't seen his mother for months, not since he had thrown her out. As he entered the supermarket, he was taken aback by the surroundings. Everything was tidy, lovely, and well organized. Then he spotted her. Anita, Aunt Rose's daughter, was behind the counter. She had just finished assisting a customer. She turned, and their eyes locked. For a brief moment, Pedro forgot how to articulate words. She smiled politely. Good morning, sir. How may I assist you? Pedro swallowed nervously. Good morning. I am here to see Madame Grace. Anita's smile softened. You're Pedro? She asked gently. He nodded slowly. She's in her office. Go to the end of the hallway. Last door on the right, she said, as he walked past her. He glanced back once more. Something in his heart stirred. She seems different. Calm, kind. Pedro stood before his mother's office door. His hands trembled. He knocked softly. Come in. Her voice called gently. He opened the door and saw her. Madame Grace was seated at her small office desk. She looked up. Their eyes met. Tears instantly welled in his eyes. He dropped to his knees. Mama, please forgive me, he said. I have sinned against you. I let pride take control of me. I pushed you away. I believed falsehoods. I forgot your tears, your sacrifices. But I promise you, from this day forward, I will never choose any woman over you again. I ended everything with Lydia. Grace looked at him, hurt, shocked, yet filled with love. Her voice was calm, but heavy. Pedro, you broke my heart. You abandoned me when I had nothing. But who am I to withhold forgiveness from my own son? I forgave you long before today. Pedro cried harder. Thank you, Mama. I don't deserve your love. She sighed. Stand up, my son. Grace wiped her tears. There's something I want to share with you. A stranger, Mr. Stephen, came to my aid. He financed this supermarket and sent the Hummer Jeep that took me to your wedding. Pedro gazed at her and offered a gentle smile. Mama, I know. I sent him. Grace's eyes grew wide. You what? Pedro affirmed with a nod. I sent him to assist you. I anticipated you would decline if I approached myself. The supermarket, the shop, the Hummer Jeep, that was all me. I wanted you to rise once more. I also purchased a mansion in your name. It belongs to you. Mama Grace covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face again. Pedro, my son, is this true? Yes, Mama, he replied softly. And Aunt Rose, too. I got her a house, a car, and arranged for a driver. She supported you when I couldn't. Grace started to cry, but this time it was tears of joy. Thank you, God. You have restored my child. Pedro smiled shyly. Mama, there's one more thing. Yes, my son. I think I have feelings for Anita. Grace chuckled softly. She honors her elders. I like her as well. Pedro beamed for the first time with a sense of peace. A year later, Pedro and Anita tied the knot. It was a serene, beautiful ceremony, filled with love, not arrogance. Madame Grace and Aunt Rose beamed with joy, thankful that everything concluded with peace, forgiveness, and genuine happiness. As for Lydia, she relocated to America with her new husband. Life imparted many tough lessons to her, and gradually she transformed.